Hello and welcome to Today in the News from Vanguard Live. I am Rolake Ademiji. And this morning I'll be starting with Vanguard on the paper review. Vanguard is leading with two appropriation in 1 year. Experts react as National Assembly okays rollover of 2024 budget till December 2025. Reps effort to curb multiple budgets falls. Nigerians financially bleeding. That's coming from Senator Abdullahi. 2027 polls, other diverting attention from governance, project delivery. That's coming from Senator Dixon. You can find that story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Police arrest 48 over Benue massacre, Plateau killings. And lastly on the Vanguard newspaper, strikes continue in Iran, Israel, despite Trump's ceasefire announcement. You can find that story on page 40 of the Vanguard newspaper. The Punch is leading with Tinubu National Assembly face criticism over 2024 budget extension. OPS economy slam federal government over budget delays. Government eyes December as low revenue stalls 2024-2025 budgets. You can find that story on page 57 of the Punch newspaper. 2031 presidency. Tinubu's successor tussle fuels 2027 VP slot battle. Deputy Senate President Jibrin disowned campaigners as APC beguiles intensifier. You can find that story on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. The Guardian is leading with project funding, execution stall over poor project implementation. Federal government, Lagos, Ekiti to check obstacles hindering ease of doing businesses. You can find that story on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. Fresh PDP, Labour Party defection to APC as opposition parties battle internal crisis. Tinubu, farmer elder conflict and opportunities to structure social stability, food security. You can find that story on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. 53 suspects arrested over Benue Plateau killing, says IGP. And lastly on the Guardian newspaper, Lagos to begin digital numbering of houses from July 1st. You can find that story on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. And lastly, the nation is leading with more confusion in PDP over Anyewu. INEC declines party request. SDP, NWC suspend chair, two others. You can find that story on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. Why Senate extended budget 2024 capital votes. Brazilian backed $1 billion initiative to overhaul agriculture sector. And lastly on the Nation newspaper, 53 held over Benue Plateau killing, says IG. And you can find that story on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all we have for today. Join us after the short break for a brief analysis of some of the stories with our guests. Welcome back if you are just joining us. This is Today in the News from Vanguard Live. I am Rolake Ademiju. And joining me this morning to analyze some of our story is Mr. Gbenru Olajuyibe. He's the Executive Director of Emergency and Risk Alert. Good morning, Mr. Gbenru.
Good morning.
Yes, so the first story, the Nigerian government through the National Assembly, they've extended the 2024 budget till December 31st, 2025. And this is going to be the second time they are going to be extending the budget. So that means Nigeria is still spending the 2024 budget, even though the 2025 budget has been approved. So the question now is that why is the 2025 budget not being implemented, and what are the implications of this delay for workers and contractors?
Well, the budget. I don't know how we look at the budget of the country like Nigeria. When appropriation act is in place, it becomes the law most crucial law after the ground, the Constitution of the Federal Republic. That means that its implementation must be done according to the prescription of the law. But here you have a situation where two budgets, even at the threshold of this government, two budgets ran concurrently when President came into office. In fact, more than two budgets, about three, because there was equally a supplementary budget that have to be going together almost at the same time. It's very, very untidy. It violates all financial procedures that is known to accountability, that is known to transparency, that is even known to law guiding enactment of appropriation. So it's not a good thing when you begin. Ordinarily, the convention is that the previous budget can be run in the first quarter of the current year, but not to the extent of going to the second quarter and even protruding to the third quarter, because that is the implication when it's extended now. The implication is that it's going to grow into the quarter of the year. Then where are you going to? What the meaning is that it's budget failure, poor implementation of previous budget, and poor making process that we are seeing. It is a symbol of mediocrity. When you have a National Assembly that behaves like this, recklessly against what is expected of a particular appropriation year or budget year. And these are open window for poor performance, for performance that is hardly accountable, and open malfeasance, poor implementation of budget, poor performance of the budget, and corruption. Those are the implications of what is going on in the country. So it's highly unacceptable, and this is not the first time this thing is happening. The first budget presented by the president, the current government, suffered the same fate. Even though that can be reasonably understood because a new government came in May. So it prepared a supplementary budget in addition to the one approved by the Buhari administration. And within that same year, you have three budgets running concurrently. This is a repetition of that. That means that they have not learned anything from the laxity, the legislation laxity in terms of lawmaking. And lawmaking, like I have told you, the most important act of parliament as it stands today, after the constitution, which is the ground, is the budget. And how do you begin to toy with it like this? Opening doors for sharp practices and unethical practices that is deviant to financial procedure, to financial process, to financial guideline, and unethical to even financial practice.
Okay, Mr. Agbenro, talking about running budgets concurrently, how does this affect the fiscal discipline and the transparency?
The implication of that is that the previous year, the budget was not well implemented. It was poorly implemented. Maybe they have, and another one is that the legislature were not up in their duty because Nigerians have started enjoying implementation of budget from January to December. But that has been thrown to the wind with this type of practice. If anything, like I've said, because of the challenge of giving room for assent by the president to a particular budget, the feedback that will arise, you can extend the previous budget for 3 months, which is a quarter of a year. That one is understandable until the current one comes into effect. That one is understandable. Like I've told you, is that what they wanted to use the money for in the other budget, in most cases, they are not even replanned, they are not even reprojected. And what happened is that you have them awarding phony contracts to themselves, to their cronies, and to others, recklessly done. And that is the reason for the corruption, outlandish corruption that is going on or has been going on. So that means that the Ninth Assembly made effort to ensure that the budget runs from January to December in Nigeria. But this current assembly has jettisoned that. And it's not good for accountability. It's not even good for transparency. And it opens door for sharp practices, malfeasance, corruption of unequal proportion.
Okay, Mr. Gbenro. What impact will this overlapping implementation have over inflation? You know, given that the concurrent capital budget, there's going to be flow of money. What do you think this will, or do you think it is going to affect the inflation of the country?
Whether it's going to affect
the inflation of the country, you know, the impact of this overlapping implementation.
You will even find out that most of the previous budget that has been extended, most of what they budgeted for is still budgeted for in the current one too. So that is why I'm saying that it makes the budget to become opaque, to become untransparent when you look at that way. So those are the challenges with this type of budgeting. How many are you going to study? Are you going to look at? And upon that, the funding for the budget. That's why you see all this reckless borrowing. I mean, those are the implications. In order to fund the budget, they need to borrow. And without appropriately accounting for the project and for the previous budget. Because when you are having a new budget in place, you have to have done the summary of the previous one, the level of performance, and the gap that is left. That should inform the new budget. And which ought to have been budgeted for in the current one, the current appropriation. But you still have money for that, and that has been appropriated. The budget appropriation has been made in that same respect. That is, you may be having two budgets concurrently and fraudulently funding the same projects.
But how do you think this will the inflation cost in Nigeria? How do you think it is going to affect the inflation cost in Nigeria?
Yeah, the inflation is already high. Borrowing has affected it. Poor choice of policies has affected it in terms of the intrinsic value of naira. The debt burden has affected inflation. If you go to a market now, you pick a piece of yam, they will tell you it's 5,000 naira. Food inflation is rocketing. In the budget, the inflation has moved from the so-called 24% now and to whatever it may be now. That is the reality in the Nigerian market of today. So all these have implication for the inflation. Because if you look at it, the decimation of naira to the extent that is worth almost nothing today, at almost 1,600 per dollar, and the cost of living that has skyrocketed, the standard of living that has fallen, and the shrinking disposable income of the people, given all these conditions, has led to inflation. And to add to it, there's no production going on. So how do you re-gig economy where cost of production is so high and has frustrated most of those that are producing in Nigeria because they cannot, their goods and services can no longer compete with foreign goods and services that are being imported. And consequently, it has led to, because when a company cost of production is so high and it's not making profit, it's not even breaking even, the consequence is that there will be retrenchment. And in most cases, there have been outright closure of some companies. And most of them have exited Nigeria. These are spiral effects of all these things we are doing, and we think that we are smart because we open door for corruption, we open door for inefficiency. Even at legislative level, what you begin to wonder, what have they been doing? I don't know what the fate of this country will look like in terms of effective budget performance. I'm not talking of money rate or budget. To go to the man and see that they have done what they proposed to do with the money that they money allotted to that. You can hardly find that in Nigeria today. You can hardly track the sources of projects that have been done within any budget in the last few years in Nigeria. So it's just like appropriating for themselves in the real sense of it, why the poor go are suffering at all time.
That's it, Mr. Gbenro. Then, what systematic reform do you think are needed to ensure that these annual budgets are implemented within the given time?
Corrupt system that is run by corrupt people will not do any reform that will be sustainable. For example, why have you asked yourself, within this budget and within this economic problem and challenges that Nigeria is facing, why is National Assembly taking away money that is immoral, that is legal, that is unconstitutional, such money like the so-called constituency project and allowances that are not known to any law in Nigeria, that are not approved by the Mobilization Commission, salaries and wages. So why are they taking it? And you want, when you build a corrupt system, you put in place people that continue to run that, and to their own advantage and to the detriment of the entire people and society. That is what we have. So when they say they are doing reform, reform for who? What are they targeting? What reform has happened in the oil sector today, other than shifting the burden of money, a payment of money to the poor and to the people who are buying petrols and using them as transport? There's no problem that have been solved. Because I agree that they are raking in money, more money now, but at 2 seconds, at the expense of the people who are paying more. Not that they are making any in the real sense of economic principle. What is happening now is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Robbing the people of Nigeria by paying higher in terms of buying fuel, in terms of engaging in transportation from one place to the other, and then they are making money. That is not how people progress. How people progress, how nation progress is that your people are earning more. They have more to the extent that they will pay more tax with a very stable, intrinsic value of your currency. So they are not making any progress. They are just collecting from the poor. The poor are getting poorer because you have to buy 1 tuber of yam for 5,000, because they have to pay more for accommodation, because they have to pay more for their children in school, in terms of transporting them, in terms of sustaining them, in terms of feeding them. And the government is thinking that it's making money. That is being kobo wise and naira foolish. So that is not how it's antithetical to development economy. Development economies assume that when you empower your workforce, the productive sector of your economy, there is production, there is everything, the employment is there, then you can earn more tax. But even in poverty, they are still taxing the poverty of the poor, of the people. So how will development come? How will even growth? You can't witness any substantial, reasonable, sustainable growth in that type of atmosphere. That is the challenge, and people don't know this. It's roll in, roll out. That is what you are getting. Roll in, roll off. And at the end of the day, we still come back to the vicious cycle starting point. So it's a vicious cycle. When President Tinubu leaves, like Buhari, they are blaming Buhari today. What will be exposed will be worse than what happened under Buhari. That is it. But if you are grounded in economic theories, and particularly theories of economic development, you will know that these policies, they can say that, oh, governors are earning more, presidents are earning more, at two expense, at the expense of your people. People are getting poorer. So people are earning less. That is why the government is earning. And in a situation where you have a rich government and poor people, that is not, it is antithetical to development. What you have is better to have rich people and rich people that will contribute to make the government rich through tax.
Okay, Mr. Gbenro, but what systemic method do you think that they can adopt to ensure that this budget does not have extension or any delay?
Number one, there must be strategy for industrialization. Let me give you one example. Clean example that is, look, now you increase electricity tariff. The implication of in a poor country like Nigeria, one of the cheapest things should be electricity, because that will encourage availability of electricity, accessibility of electricity or power, if you want to call it that so, and affordability of electricity. What that will do is that it will create a clement environment for location of industries, location of factories, because cost of production will inevitably come down and reduce. So the company, that means that when they come and they produce as low cost, the cost of production is low, they'll be able to employ your citizens who are employed or unemployed right now, particularly the young population. That is one strategy they should think. They should not be putting forth disjointed policy that will benefit them at the expense of their own people. That is what is happening. It's not a proper policy. Is what you need to develop economy in a poor country like Nigeria. Nigeria is not poor. I use that poor in quote because I better use that it's an impoverished country. Not a poor country, but impoverished by those who claim to be the ruler of the country, the rulers of the country.
Thank you, Mr. Gbenro. Let's move to the next question. You know, the PDP is facing a serious leadership crisis, mainly about who is the real national secretary right now. And you know, it is said that they have two national secretary, one is backed by the FCT minister. So now the question is that how much constitutional confusion does the PDP leadership crisis expose about the internal party democracy in Nigeria?
Well, corruption destroyed PDP. Corruption destroyed PDP. When you continue to collect money, when Wike was governor, allow him to fund the party, and inevitably he put the party in his pocket. So now you are crying wolf. What do they expect? If you have the one party is organized those days is that members of that party make contribution to the party, and the party is not owned by anybody. And then you can follow your law, not bending it this time because this person is the one you are getting money from. So PDP is a victim of its own corruption, and not necessarily the current corruption. It has been on even when they were in power. They never thought that a day like this will come. Now, after they lost power, they returned to Rivers State to be collecting money to the extent that Wike was the one dictating who will become the chairman of the party, and possibly those who will occupy national position at certain level, and even at zonal geographic level. So the party has been captured by an individual, and havoc has been wreaked on the party. And now they are struggling to get themselves out of the hole they have put themselves in. When you have done that ab initio, it becomes so difficult and scandalous. The only remedy available for PDP now is to rebrand. Maybe, I don't know if their convention will eventually hold in 2 months' time. If they are lucky to have that convention, they should not be looking for people who will buy their form to contest for 5 million, for 50 million as chairman and everything. They have been looking for thieves who will contest. And they got it. And the thieves now are holding to the party's jugular. That is what has happened. So if they are able to get themselves right, they should rebrand. Rebranding means that they should change their whole way. They should move from party of corruption to party of ethical transparency that is accountable to the people and to their members, and not to an individual, to individuals.
Okay, Mr. Agbero. Do you think that
okay, the names is badly damaged. It's a damaged branch, and they may not survive it because election in 2 years' time, and they are still struggling with the interpretation of who is their secretary. The Supreme Court has affirmed the Wike loyalist, I don't know his name now, as the secretary, but they don't want to accept it now. But it's too late. And the havoc that Wike being loyal to APC and still having his foot on the neck of PDP is a total one. And with federal might, I don't know how they will survive it, because is committed to destroy the party to the extent that the relic will not even be recognized.
Okay, Mr. Agbero, what step do you think that the PDP should take to resolve this dispute and restore the public confidence?
Well, the only thing left for them now, I think the Supreme Court backed secretary has about 2 months. I don't know if they can allow him to complete his his tenure, and maybe they bring in new people. Eventually, if they are able to bring new people, because I don't see new people, all of them have vested interest, and they are no longer loyal to the party because the party is not dispensing meal ticket like when they were in power. So that is what can happen now. So after rebranding, as long as they still be a PDP, that is an eternal burden that will not take them anywhere. That brand has been damaged, and they need to change name, change focus, change structure, change people that will man the structure, and create a new culture of transparency, accountability, and respect for every members of the party, irrespective of your position. Unless they are able to do that, they are not going to go anywhere. Even if they rebrand now, it will take the grace of God alone for them to even make impact in 2027 election. And they could all see the handwriting on the wall. But then, let them continue to make effort. If they are able to do what I have suggested now, maybe at least they will be able to come back to appreciable stability as a political party.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Agbero. That was our analyst for today.
It's a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That was our analyst for today, Mr. Gweriola Igwe. He's the Executive Director of Emergency and Risk Alert. And that will be all for today. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms displaying on your screen. And you can visit our website, www.vanguardngr.com. I am Rolake.